All right, welcome to the Container and App Security Planning Breakdown meeting. We're doing this weekly for right now. We'd like to reduce the cadence of this over time. But for right now, we really are playing a little bit of catch up with issues that have been sitting and waiting for grooming over time. That being said, I hope everybody remembers the goals of this meeting. We're not trying to groom issues in this meeting. We're trying to answer the high-level questions of, are the requirements clear enough to understand the intent of the request? Do we know the boundaries of work to be accomplished? Is the research and solution validation complete? And what are some possible ways that this could logically be broken down into smaller component features going forward? So like I said, not grooming, just making sure we understand the requirements and discussing work boundaries and where we can break it down more. So that being said, Sam has added a number of issues to the agenda for today. And I am looking at the wrong one, sorry.
I'm happy to share if we
That'd be great.
want me to. So these are not new ones. I mean, we've discussed these the last two times that we've had this meeting, but we have made some progress in getting additional details and mocks put together, at least for these top two that we currently have slated for 12.9. So again, hopefully this isn't anything terribly new other than we now have mocks for these. So I can at least walk through this real quick. We'll start with this issue, which is really about providing users with a way to enable and disable their WAF and also to switch it between logging and blocking mode. And for this, we want them to be able to do that both globally and have a global default setting, and then also have a per environment exception basis to that. It is well noted that there are ways to do that right now, but a major part of this issue is providing it in a very user-friendly way in the GitLab UI so that they don't have to go guessing or digging through documentation to find out which environmental variable they need to pass in. Ultimately, we're trying to get this to a point where we can default it on. And if it's causing problems, we want it to be intuitive how to turn it off. So with that being said, let me pull up these mocks. These are not 100% final yet, but I think they're looking really, really good and getting very close to that. So this is what Andy put together. We've got initially on the operations Kubernetes page, we'll have a new section here for ModSecurity. So I believe right now it's bundled up into Ingress. We'll be pulling that out and giving it its own space in the UI where you can install it, uninstall it, enable it or disable it globally, and switch it between logging and blocking mode globally. The idea being that when you hit save changes here, it proactively pushes that out to any environments that are set to use the global setting. And then I'll spare the details of all of these mocks, but the idea is that in the operations environments page, you would now have a protection button that would produce this pop-out drawer that lets you either use the global setting or change it on a per environment basis. And you can also turn it on or off for that specific environment. So when you change the global setting, anything that's enabled and set to global is going to follow that global setting, and it'll be pushed out to it when you hit save changes. Any questions on this issue?
Very good. So have we determined who's going to be the primary engineer working on this? Is it you, Arthur, just looking at the notes, or have we not decided that yet?
We have not decided that yet. We haven't entered grooming for this yet. And to be totally clear, this isn't yet slated for 12.9 because we need to get through this conversation and grooming before we say we have confidence that we're committing to this for 12.9.
It does seem like this one can be broken down into multiple different issues between the toggling on and off, blocking, logging, even between the global project-based settings. There's probably 5 or 6 different issues that can come out of this one.
And to be clear, you're talking about breaking down issues based on deliverable functionality, not based on how we code it, right? So
Right.
breaking it down into smaller features, which is something that I would look to Sam to decide if that's what he wants to do. I don't think that's something engineering should be breaking down. We're just here to just suggest it to you, Sam. So, you know, I think you and I talked about this one previously. Does Jonathan's suggestion make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know where those breakpoints exist for you guys in engineering, and I'm happy to, we'll move this into an epic, I believe, for our new workflow and create issues under that epic with the individual deliverable pieces.
So Jonathan, do you want to add under this issue in the agenda, sort of the, what you just listed off, sort of the, I think you said 4 or 5 different areas that made sense to you? I mean, again, I would expect the PM to agree to that level of granularity, but just for suggestion's sake.
Sure. Do you want me to put it in the doc here or in the issue itself?
Always in the issue
the
itself is a
issue.
better answer.
Okay. That's just checking. All right. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put that in the issue then.
Thanks.
So maybe I missed it in the parent issue, but just to ask the question, what was the rationale for breaking out ModSecurity as a separate application from the Ingress?
So the rationale there is just that you can have Ingress installed, but not ModSecurity. And so even though there is a like ModSecurity has a dependency of Ingress, like if you look at some of these other ones, you have ways to configure settings for them. It really is, at least my understanding is it's 2 different technologies at the end of the day. And so from a UX perspective, we just wanted to split that out so that any configuration we wanted to do with ModSecurity kind of had its own place to live, you know, separate from any configuration of Ingress. Are you suggesting that they should stay together just because ModSecurity requires Ingress to be installed to work? Or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, currently it does, and I would actually, I guess I would say ModSecurity is more of an extension on top of Ingress. I'm thinking about how we do this with other applications here, and it really would be, at least currently in terms of the implementation, is more of a series of settings on the Ingress itself. I'm not necessarily saying that the current state is the way that we want it to be. I guess I'm just trying to better understand the split here. And I understood what you said there. I just have to think about that more. This is a significant, this would be a significant change in terms of the implementation. Each one of these applications is backed by like a separate database record and tied to like a Helm deployment. So we either would have to change the way that our ModSecurity is deployed significantly, or add a lot of kind of front-end liaising to make it seem like 2 separate applications. That can just go in the issue itself, but just something worth raising here.
And Lucas, I think we can prepare a fallback if it gets to be a blocker. This is definitely like an ideal experience we want to drive to, especially seeing some of the new designs for the managed apps experience. But with that said, we can always do some magic and make this more of like a +1, what we have today, as opposed to like a +10.
Yeah, I think with certain technical directions that we've been looking at as well, namely what Arthur's been working on. In theory, I think this would make more sense as keeping ModSecurity as kind of like a separate deployed application. However, currently, I think for a V1 or V2, I think it would make sense to tie this directly to the Ingress still.
Okay, we can keep that. All right, I can keep designs in my back pocket for that. Look to Sam.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of how we break this down, right? It's an initial step maybe the last thing we do is split this out from ingress. Maybe we do everything else first, and then if splitting this out from ingress is going to be a heavy dev lift, if we can size that independently and separately, then that helps me to put the appropriate priority on it.
Oh, sounds good.
Any other questions, commentary on this issue before we move on to the next one?
Just to call out, if you are going to break this down into smaller features, I'd like to bring those broken down issues to a planning breakdown in the future so that we can make sure that for that individual piece, we've got all these same questions answered.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you guys engineering are recommending breaking it down, which it sounds like you are, then I'm definitely supportive of that. So yes, that's fine with me.
And to be clear, I think there's breaking things down based on how engineering is going to implement things and sort of sub issues and subtask type breakdowns. But this is very much deliverable features that could stand alone. And in this case, we think it makes the most sense for you to drive that.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. Any other questions about this one, folks?
All right. So with that one, we'll move on to cluster network policy statistics, which is the next item in our backlog. We're done, nearly done, I guess I should say, with statistics for the web application firewall, which look like this. Really what we're looking at is just extending that functionality, putting another section on the same page that is specific for container network policy. The goal of this graph is, well, let me start by stating some things that we're not trying to accomplish with this graph. We're not trying to show the performance of Cilium. We're not trying to show, there are a lot of different stats that we could show. We're not trying to show all of the stats that are available to us. What we are trying to show here is just the same very basic thing with WAF is, is it on and is it working and how much is it blocking? So, just being able to see, here's the total volume that Cilium processed, shows me, hey, it's on, it's working, it's passing traffic, and here's how much got dropped. So, I know how much it's actually doing for me. That was the initial concept. I saw some other comments on this issue. Arthur, I know you commented on it. I don't know if it makes sense to start with that, or if there are other questions more burning. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, here's your comment.
This one is actually, I was a bit confused yesterday because I think these graphs will be per environment. So it's essentially per Kubernetes namespace. In this case, my comment is kind of invalid. And so the situation was I was facing yesterday is that we have two graphs, one for drops and one for forwards, and we have stats in a percentage of drops from total amount of packets. So I was doing prototyping and noticed that this ratio is usually really low because Cilium manages ingress and inbound and outbound traffic across the cluster, and drops are usually policy local. In this case, I noticed that the ratio was really low and graphs looked really like scales of both graphs were a bit bad. But if we will do that per environment, we have a drop down at the top. I think it will be looking a bit better. So I was a bit wrong. So disregard my last comment, but I had some questions for Andy in terms of UI because our current threat management page is heavily scoped around WAF in a lot of messages contain, like mention WAF specifically. So we might need to just restructure those messages and callouts and pop-ups to be more generic.
Yeah, because everything here is per environment, right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how you would do it otherwise.
I was actually, until a minute ago, was not sure how to get stats per environment, but apparently Cilium stores Kubernetes namespace with each Prometheus metric as the tag. So we will be able to do that. Yeah, so there was a bit of confusion on my end. I already did some work around that, and I think overall this issue looks good. It's definitely actionable. I have a bit of front end going already, and maybe we'll have a first version this week.
And I'm gonna
Does
post.
this one need to be broken down more, or are we good with the level of granularity that we're at?
I think we're good. Yeah, again, I went as far as changing UI, and I checked everything from getting Prometheus metrics, ensuring that they're in the Prometheus and accessible through the code. So yeah, it's definitely actionable.
So I had a question on this one for the empty state, which is, since we can install Prometheus from a cluster management application, we're not installing it through the UI. We shouldn't have any state within on the GitLab side.
Sorry to clarify, the Prometheus integration into class application is not fully working right now. And specifically for this one, it's not going to be usable. So I contributed Prometheus metrics to the repository, but it's because I was asked to do that, not that because it's finished. There is an issue specifically with UI. Prometheus is installed, can be installed through the class application, and it's working, but it's not visible by our UI. And all the Prometheus related features are not activating, and this means that client is not available to you. So the only way to use Prometheus right now is either through the GitLab managed apps or a self-managed installation.
So sorry, you said through the GitLab managed app. So the one that's not working right now is the installation through the UI.
No, the one that's not working right now is class applications and UI installation, like the old way GitLab managed app v1 is working.
And so you can't run it. You can install a GitLab, or you can install a Prometheus through the UI, Cilium through the managed app, and they will work together?
Yes, I tested. Okay. Sorry, can I open the door really fast?
Yeah, sure. And sorry, this is relevant. I don't. So hopefully I'll finish this one up quickly. But while Arthur's gone, I have concerns because currently with cluster management projects or cluster applications, we don't communicate back to the UI. So I don't know if we will have a empty state to differentiate between Cilium is installed or Cilium is not installed. So
on the metrics page in operations, do they just kind of play the like, we're going to give you an empty state regardless of us not fetching or it not being set up properly?
Well, for the metrics page, they can say whether Prometheus is installed or not with the UI, but we have another dependency, which is Prometheus installed and whether Cilium is installed. And so we can't, I don't know if we can tell if Cilium is installed currently, if it's installed through a cluster management project.
Yeah, I roughly understand what you're asking, but is it really an issue right now? Because front end works really interesting right now. I think Mark did that. Essentially, on the page load, we try to fetch stats, and if stats not there, we show an empty state that says that you probably set up something wrong. Go check documentation. So that's the logic we have for WAF right now, and I'm replicating it for Cilium, just slightly different copy and different link.
I'm happy with that as long as everyone knows that that is that is what happens right now. We kind of just throw our hands up and say, well, not seeing data.
This is actually roughly what monitoring team does. The first step is, yeah, as you mentioned, you don't like the check for the actual application, but once you have application, doesn't mean you're going to have stats in it. So the next thing you're going to see in UI after installing Prometheus is that you don't have stats, like roughly similar what you have right now.
So to summarize, if I understood you right, you said basically if we don't have any stats coming from Cilium, we're just going to show that it's the empty state, regardless of whether or not they've actually installed Cilium. It's harder to check that fact, but we can just say, oh, we haven't seen any stats yet, so it's not there. Is that correct?
Yes, I think this logic is decent on the base what Lucas said. First of all, we can't check if there is no a good check right now to see if Cilium is installed and not, because we're using Clasp applications. Clasp applications are not well integrated back into the monolith. And second part, we also need a Prometheus installed. So I would say doing a better check than we have right now is a really complicated process. Again, it might be missing Prometheus, it might be missing Cilium, it might be annotation on the Cilium is not activated. We can't really control, check everything. And on basis of this, I think it's just easier to say no stats, go check the docs and try to set it up correctly.
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable to me. I'm okay with a less than perfect check.
Cool. Well, if that's good, we can make a note of that and use 6 more minutes for the next 2 items, unless anyone has anything else.
So yeah, I think this one actually, Lindsay, is now good then. If we're done with designs, if we're all in agreement to move it from planning breakdown onto scheduling.
Yeah, it
I
sounded like
think this one's in a really good state.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but based on this conversation, you guys feel like we've satisfied all of our questions for planning breakdown and can move into grooming, and some of that grooming's already even been done, it sounds like. Arthur? I'm looking at you, man.
I haven't done grooming, unfortunately.
Okay, but it's ready for grooming. As far as you're concerned, we
Yeah,
understand the requirements, we understand the work boundaries, we think it's the right level of granularity. What was our fourth question? This is basically it. All right, if you want to move on, Sam, I can take care of that.
Okay. So I don't know that we have time to really dive into these ones about the logs, and those are further out. So I'm fine to pass on those. Instead, if we've got 5 more minutes, I just want to maybe just have a discussion outside of these immediate issues related to what we were just talking about, how we know if Cilium is on or not. So just like we've got this issue around being able to turn WAF on and off and switch it between logging and blocking, we're going to want to be able to do the same thing with Cilium. Now, I don't have an issue on that yet, but that's something to start thinking about. How can we expose that in the UI? And I don't know, I feel like for our last 5 minutes, it might be productive just to start the discussion around that at an early state. Based off of what you said around just even knowing if it's on or not, it sounds like we might be facing some pretty hard technical challenges adding a UI switch to turn Cilium on or off.
Yes and no. Right now, yes, but again, it's just based on the fact that we are using what essentially will be GitHub Managed Apps version 2. It's a work in progress by orchestration team. Most of the UI features are not there. They are focusing on feature parity between class applications and GitHub Managed Apps. I think schedule is next 4 to 7 releases to have UI similar to what we have right now with GitHub Managed Apps. It will be slightly different because all settings will probably go anti-model dialog from my understanding, or some sort of it, because you will be able to change more than you can right now. You essentially will be able to provide any arbitrary value to the Helm chart in the future. So yeah, to answer your question, right now we're a bit limited, and we're essentially asking users to go and change value in the repository and redeploy a CI job. That's the way to go. But in the future, it will be a bit more. It will be better integrated into the UI.
Got it. So it sounds like we have at least something of a dependency on another team there. All right. Well, that's good to know. I think that's it for today. Unless there are other comments around that future direction with Cilium, I just wanted to start exploring that and bring it up to the team.
I was also wondering, with everyone's here, if it would be helpful to do like a demo of exactly what GitLab Managed Apps v2 looks like, in case that's not clear to everyone here. So we can do a quick installation of, okay, cool. And so
Yeah, I would love
to
to have that for sure.
Do you want to just record that and share it, Lucas, or should we have a synchronous meeting for it? Or should somebody record it and share it?
I think that synchronous is probably best because there will be questions halfway through, and it's kind of it could be a potentially long video. But,
okay, and that'd be you that'd be demoing it, right? Or is there someone?
Unless we have any volunteers.
Yeah, that would be great if you could put that meeting together, Lucas. I think that'll help, help guide our direction there.
Okay, cool. I'll see if there's a slot later this week and send out an invite.
Great. Well, thanks. I appreciate your participation today.
Don't forget, this is going to be on YouTube. Bye.